Hello, everyone, and we are starting a new story today. And this story is one about a man named Jonah. Jonah was a prophet, and a prophet is somebody who gives people messages from God. And the Bible says, and this is how this story begins, God said to Jonah, I want you to go to the city of Nineveh and tell the people there to stop doing bad things. Now, one of the bad things that Nineveh had done was that the army from Nineveh had come to Jerusalem, where God's people were living, and they had wiped it out. They had completely messed it off the map. They took a big magic marker and scribbled it out like it wasn't going to be there anymore, and they had broken down the walls, and they had done all sorts of mean, nasty, ugly things to people in the course of that. And those were the people that God was sending Jonah to talk to. People that you might call his enemies. That's a word that gets tossed around a lot. And that's why Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. The people there were bad, and Jonah didn't like them. And he didn't understand or have any idea why God would want to help them. Even Jonah's friends knew that the people from Nineveh were bad, and they didn't like them either. So Jonah decided to run away. And here's how he did it. He's got a sign there pointing one way to Nineveh and the other way to away from Nineveh, it says. And he's trying to go in the completely opposite direction from the way that God is sending him. And the way he plans to do it is, he's in this picture, he's getting onto a boat, a big ship. And he would get onto a ship that would take him far, far, far away from Nineveh. It would go in the opposite direction. Well, Jonah couldn't hide from God. And shortly after the ship set sail, God sent a great storm, a big, mighty storm. Jonah didn't know about it because Jonah was asleep below deck when it started. But soon the wind from the storm became so strong that it shook the whole ship back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in the water. Here's a picture of that. This story has a lot of good pictures. I like stories with pictures. Let's imagine the ship going up and down and up and down and up and down. And maybe the sailor's getting a little seasick. All sorts of things could be happening. But surely they're getting scared. Because if you're out in a ship and a storm comes up like that, it is frightening. And what you'd be scared of would make some sense. Sometimes people get scared of things that don't really matter. Sometimes when they get scared, it makes sense for them to be scared. Well, the captain and the sailors were afraid that the ship would break apart. And so the sailors started tossing things overboard to make the load lighter. But it didn't help. And one of the sailors asked a question. He said, "What's causing this storm?" And nobody knew. They tried calling upon their gods to stop the storm, but the storm just grew bigger. Remember how Nebuchadnezzar had people calling on his gods that weren't really gods? And how that happened when he built the statue or when he told people to pray to him and Daniel had said no? Well, these people were calling on their gods that weren't really gods. And they thought, oh, they'll calm everything down for us. But it wasn't happening. And nobody knew what was causing the storm. Then one of the sailors remembered that Jonah was on board. And he had told the sailors that he was running away from God. The ship's captain went to Jonah and he said, "How can you sleep? How can you sleep through all of this? You must call on your God and maybe he will protect us." because their gods weren't doing it. And the sea was getting rougher and rougher and rougher and rougher and rougher, and they were going up and they were going down and they were going up and they were going down, and they were getting more and more scared and more seasick. The sailors were very frightened. What can we do, they asked, to make the storm go away? That's where we're going to stop for today. Isn't that a great place to end a story, right? We're not ending it, we're just stopping. Because they had a really good question. What can we do to make the storm go away? And that's a lot of what we ask when things are going wrong for us. How can we make the problems stop? How can we make our troubles finish up? And sometimes there's a very easy answer. Sometimes it's something that we've been doing, and we just need to change how we're doing it. Or sometimes it's something somebody else is doing, and we need to get them to change, or maybe just sort of not get mixed up in their problems. Like if somebody always gets you into trouble, somebody has ideas, a friend that always lead to problems, maybe you have to watch out and say no, and I'm going home right now, I'll see you tomorrow, something like that. Well, the sailors were trying to figure things out, and tomorrow we'll find out what solution they came up with. Well, Jonah slept during the storm, and I hope you guys sleep well too. Good night.